Okay, well, it's a new week in our class on teaching and learning with digital technology, and this week is about active learning with technology. But I wanted to start out by pointing out what should be done or what will be due over the spring break week. Just so you know, by the way, if you don't want to work over spring break, that's okay, just get it done before. You have a couple of weeks anyway. But yeah, spring break. Okay, so during that week, there is the active learning project. So that's due March 9th. And we're just going to take a look at what we'll be working toward in this next little area or this next little unit. So this is an active learning assignment. And for this project, you're going to choose an existing lesson plan, and it's going to be a lot like the previous one, right? Choose an existing lesson plan that you have created and or taught to your students. Your job is to add some technology-supported activities that provide for active learning. And so I'm allowing you to choose these active learning. Remember, you need to know what active learning is, number one, and be able to go back to your meaningful learning that you've been doing in the previous part of this semester. And what is active learning? Remember, there's manipulation and observation and what all that is. Try to understand that. And then remember that this can lead to learning as long as students are thinking about the results of their actions on the environment and implement this new lesson in your class and reflect upon the experience. All right, so that's what your plan is. So the previous plan that we had was just an idea. You could kind of just come up with an idea for a lesson plan and think about how you might add some technology to make it more authentic. So now I'm asking you to add some technology to make it more active and then try it out in your class. Now this brings up some problems for those of you, and there are a lot of you in this class this time, who are not currently classroom teachers. And so instead of actually trying it out in your class, I'll talk about an alternative you can do for this assignment. All right, so that's what you want to do. Remember, active learning. All right, so the technologies that I'm allowing you to choose from are from two different areas. The first one is an interactive whiteboard. If you would like to do some interactive whiteboard activities, if you would like to take a previous lesson plan, an existing lesson plan, and add some interactive whiteboard activities to your plan, that's one way to support active learning, because what you can do then is you can have some physical activity where students are coming up to the board and interacting with the board in some way. And you can also have some mental activity going on at the same time, right? They might be coming up and trying something new out or thinking in a different way, manipulating something and observing the effects in a different way about the subject. So that's one way that you can add, or one type of technology that you can add to this assignment to make it active. The second one is a classroom response system. Now, a classroom response system is something that allows students to use their devices, usually devices, to respond to questions or ideas or comments or discussions in the class. And so, classroom response systems allow for students to respond in some way, and that supports their mental activity as well. Instead of them just sitting and listening to you lecture about something, they can be asked to respond in a certain way, and you can use that as you continue on in your presentation with students. So those are the two areas of technology that you can choose from. Obviously, if you're a classroom teacher with no interactive whiteboard in your classroom, you might not want to choose an interactive whiteboard because you need to have access to it. And you might want to choose the classroom response system kind of based on, let's say you have a lot of extensive experience working with the interactive whiteboard. You're a smart board ninja, or you love ClassFlow on Promethean, then maybe you need to do something different. So you learn something new. Or if you've already used a lot of classroom response systems and you feel like you've tapped that resource out already, it might be a chance for you to learn some of the new interactive whiteboard systems. Particularly, I would say ClassFlow. ClassFlow is an important tool for, I think, new teachers to know about, and it works with almost any interactive whiteboard. So that's the first choice you're going to have to make if you are a classroom teacher. If you are not, you're still going to have to choose one of these technologies and think about how it could be used in a lesson. If you do not have a previous lesson plan that you have made or taught to your students, let's say you're not a classroom teacher now and you don't have a previous lesson plan that you can adjust to this. As with the last assignment, you can borrow one from somebody else. You can look for lesson plans online, or find maybe a plan from a friend or a colleague that they have taught and use that. Um, and yeah, so that's what you need to know about this. So you'll include these items in this plan, the original lesson plan, the link to the technology activity that was used to support this lesson. So include the technology item. You know, if it's, let's say it's a Kahoot quiz, give me a link to that quiz so I can see it. And then the updated plan that now includes use of technology for active learning, including lesson title and summary. Oh, and by the way, I should mention a link to the technology activity could be used as well if you're doing um, an interactive whiteboard plan. You can link me to the interactive whiteboard activity if it's online, or you can give me the file if it happens to be a file like a smart notebook file. So you'll include these things: lesson title and summary, list of content standards and objectives, description of learners, list of materials and technologies, all the learning activities that would be included with a detailed description of each activity, what the teacher and students will do during each one. And these should be aligned with objectives. Let's see, a description of how active learning is supported in the lesson using technology. This is that separate piece. It's not necessarily part of the lesson plan itself, but give me a description of how your active learning that you implemented, or how your technology that you implemented, supports active learning. Talk about how it supports students manipulating and observing and being active mentally as part of this plan that you have going. And then an assessment plan that shows how you would measure learning. And then finally, a reflection on the experience of teaching this new lesson, which includes answers to the following questions. And so it says, listen and discuss a few successes that occurred, listen and discuss a few challenges that occurred during the planning, implementation, and or assessment of the lesson, and listen and discuss a few ideas for redesign if you were to teach this lesson again, right? We all should be reflective teachers. We all should realize that not every lesson is perfect, and that there are things that we can always do to improve the lesson next time we teach it. So that's what the assignment is. Now, if you are not a classroom teacher, again, an accommodation for you, instead of doing the reflection on the experience and teaching this to an actual group, I mean, obviously, if you could, that would be great in the time period that we have. But if you don't, or if you can't, then an option would be to write one page, basically add a one-page discussion of how either classroom response systems can support active learning, or how interactive whiteboard software can support active learning. And cite a few sources using APA format for that. So I'm looking for 2-3 sources, a one-page paper just about how, you know, the interactive whiteboard software can support active learning, or how the classroom response system can support active learning. So instead of implementing the lesson, if you'd like to do that, you can do that. Another accommodation that I want to make sure I mention with this is, if you are a classroom teacher, you'd like to do this, but maybe the timing isn't right. Maybe you need to be able to have a little more time to get this up and going. Maybe it fits better in a certain unit that comes after spring break. Just send me an email, let me know, and we can work that out. You know, I'd rather have it kind of be authentic and work for you than to force you to a deadline necessarily. So if you think, hey, I've got a great idea for something that this would work for later than the deadline, you know, which is the end of spring break, basically March 9th, then yeah, that's okay. Let me know and we'll work it out. So, and then down below is the rubric on how you'll be graded for this assignment, and we'll go from there. So of course this week then, going back to the content area, this week you will be learning about these systems, and it's your opportunity. Next week is on STEM makerspaces, so that's going to be a different animal. So basically you just have this week to learn what you can about the systems, as much as you can if you don't know already about them. So active learning with technology. So you have this link here, supporting active student-centered learning with an interactive whiteboard. All right, so what's this all about? Well, you'll take an opportunity to read from my textbook about active student-centered learning, thinking about how you might support that active learning. And then one thing to be aware of, again, like I say, Promethean is moving away from active inspire. So in the book that you might have, it taught you already, and you learned a little bit about, I think, Active Inspire and Open Sencori, but they've moved away from that. And so there's a video instead about using ClassFlow. And ClassFlow is actually great software. I like it because it allows you to work online from anywhere. It's free, and it also it works with multiple interactive whiteboards, different kinds. It'll work on a smartboard even though it's made by Promethean. And then also it allows you to have some classroom response activities on the interactive whiteboard. So if you build an activity in ClassFlow, you can actually push that activity to every student's device. So let's say every student has their laptop in class. You can push the activity to each student, and they can all do the activity that one student might do on the interactive whiteboard at the front of the class. So that's a really cool feature as well. I really like that part of ClassFlow. And then there's another video for those who may be interested in learning more about smart software for smart boards. And Smart Lab is a nice new feature, and hopefully your district has adopted that if you do have smart boards there. Smart Lab allows for some more easy creation of some interactive activities for interactive whiteboards. So that's your chance to learn about the interactive whiteboard a little bit more. Also this week is some instruction on classroom response systems, and there are 4 that I have listed here and included: Pear Deck, Poll Everywhere, Kahoot, and Plickers. So take a look at those. Each one has a video about what to do, how to start it going, and what it does. I think if I was going to recommend a couple of things to guide you a little bit more, Pear Deck is nice because it's built into a PowerPoint type presentation to where you can have students respond. Poll Everywhere is more of an older student one. It allows students to respond. I would say it's more of an adult type tool, more of a high school type tool. Kahoot, I would say, is a younger type tool, more for elementary, and it's kind of a quick quizzing tool. It really gets kids active in competing with one another. And then Plickers is the one that you would want to use if you have no devices in your classroom besides your device as a teacher. So it actually is paper-based, so students can respond to questions just with a printed out kind of a code that they hold up. And so you don't have to have a one-to-one classroom for that one. So those are a little bit of guidance as you start to learn about classroom response systems. What you'll want to do is start to key in on what type of thing that you would like to include in your lesson plan, such as a classroom response system or an interactive whiteboard activity, and then start to key in on the one that you would want to use for sure and learn that one as well as you can so that you can talk about it in your lesson plan. Now I realize that some of you have used classroom response systems for your previous lesson plan, and so that's a little problem with that, is that the classroom response systems aren't as good at supporting authentic learning like your past lesson plan was, as they are at supporting active learning. Because active learning means, mental activity, and sometimes physical activity goes along with that. So active learning is usually how we think of classroom response systems. They support active learning, not authentic learning necessarily, unless you use them in certain ways that support that authentic learning. Okay, we have a tech talk this week as well, and that's on Seesaw. So that's a good one to be engaged in and watching this week and learning about Seesaw, a nice new tool presented by Mikkel. And then we have active learning best practices with technology as a discussion for this week. And so you're going to think about the existing lesson plan that you have created. And for this discussion, you're going to seek out some of the best practices for supporting active learning using an interactive whiteboard or classroom response system. So it gets your mind thinking. It's kind of getting your creative juices flowing, so to speak, and thinking about how you can support active learning using an interactive whiteboard or a classroom response system, and then talking about what you might do for your plan. So that's the discussion for this week, and that rounds out all the activities for this week. So I'll just wish you good luck, and good luck getting started.